You're going to want to grab a chair, Sheriff. Karen's been rammed. That's how it started. Not the story, just the morning. The sun hadn't even finished climbing over the ridge when I made that call, half laughing, half concerned, watching Karen Delaney flail her arms in the air like a marionette with tangled strings. From my porch, coffee in hand, I saw the moment her strappy heels crossed into the threshold of my barn. The very same barn with 3 warning signs, a motion-triggered sprinkler, and a carved oak plaque that read plainly, "Private Barn, Beware of Ram." She read it. I saw her squint at it. Then she shrugged, muttered something about fixing the fence, and strutted right in like she owned the place. 10 seconds later, she was airborne. You'd think a grown woman would have better sense than to trespass on a rural property known for its irritable livestock. But Karen had just moved to Dunbridge, a town so small we still write announcements on a chalkboard outside the diner. She came from a city with bagel bars and valet parking, hauling mismatched suitcases, a fake potted plant, and a mile-long list of neighborhood improvements she planned to suggest once settled. She had opinions. Loud ones. The day she arrived, she asked to speak to the HOA director. I told her we didn't have one. Her lips curled like she'd smelled a used diaper. She didn't like my barn. Said it ruined the hillside's aesthetic. Said my animals looked stressed. Asked if my scarecrow could be less aggressive. I asked if her perfume could be. We didn't exactly start off on the right foot. But even I didn't expect her to breach the barn's sacred domain on a Tuesday morning while I was oiling my tractor and listening to vintage rock on a hand-cranked radio. The barn wasn't just a structure. It was guarded. Not by cameras or dogs, but by a living, breathing, 300-pound guardian named Buckshot. That's not a nickname. That's a warning. Buckshot is a Suffolk Ram, black-faced, horned, and built like a linebacker who ate another linebacker. He's also territorial, cranky before 9 a.m., and once got kicked out of a petting zoo for emotional intimidation. I raised him myself after he headbutted his own mother at 3 weeks old. He and I have an understanding. I feed him and give him space, and in return he keeps out the weirdos. Karen, unfortunately, qualified. She creaked open the barn doors, stepped onto the hay-strewn floor, and froze. Buckshot was there, dead center, chewing on a tarp like it owed him money. Their eyes met. 2 alphas sizing each other up. Karen blinked. But instead of backing out, she raised her voice and waved her hands like she was swatting flies. Bad move. Buckshot doesn't negotiate. He charges. It wasn't a full-on impaling, thank heavens. More like a tactical shove at 20 miles per hour. Karen flew back through the barn doors, landed in the soft part of the compost pile, and shrieked like she'd been drafted into combat. That's when I called Sheriff Dahlia Flint. She showed up 10 minutes later, cruiser crunching on gravel, sunglasses on despite the clouds. She surveyed the scene. Karen, mud-splattered and flailing. Buckshot, unbothered and chewing. Me sipping coffee. She turned to me deadpan. Tell me the ram's name isn't really Buckshot. I'd never joke about something this majestic, I said. Karen had composed herself just enough to start screeching about lawsuits, PTSD, property lines, and something about animal endangerment. Dahlia had to turn away to hide her laughter. I offered Karen a towel. She slapped it out of my hand. I offered her a seat. She demanded I be arrested. Then, dramatically, she pulled out her phone and started filming. This is going to the county board. I'll have your livestock license revoked. I don't need a license to own a ram, I replied. This is America. But here's where the story stopped being funny. While Dahlia and Karen argued, I stepped into the barn to check on Buckshot and noticed something strange, a sunken patch of hay. Curious. I raked it back and hit something solid, a rusted metal box. No markings, 2 feet wide. It wasn't new. The hinges were old. The dirt on it looked recently disturbed. It hadn't been there a week ago. Something about it felt wrong. Not dangerous. Just wrong. Like it had been stashed in a hurry. Someone had moved it recently. Maybe Karen. Her panic hadn't just been from the ram. It was fear, the kind you get when you get caught doing something you shouldn't. 2 days later, I was back on the porch with sweet tea when Karen returned, this time with a man in a blazer slick enough to blind a possum. Her cousin Gregory, a lawyer. He produced a rolled-up blueprint and pointed out that, thanks to a zoning reshuffle, part of my barn might technically cross 2 feet onto her property. That makes your structure partially non-compliant, Gregory said with a smirk. Karen beamed. We think the barn should be a historical exhibit. Open to the public. Supervised. with a gift shop. Buckshot snorted in disbelief. They wandered the property plotting. I returned to the barn, hid the box under a tarp, and later showed Dahlia a photo of it. She didn't laugh. She didn't mention this, she said, chewing beef jerky. But I think she was looking for it. The box had faint engravings, AV11993. Dahlia mentioned Karen's ex, Silas Green. Said he was back in town. I hadn't heard his name in years. That night, unable to sleep, I sat in the barn with Buckshot, trying every key I had. Nothing worked. The next morning, Karen filed an injunction to seal the barn pending historical review. I couldn't enter it. Neither could Buckshot. He sulked. Hebut fence posts. Terrified squirrels. Then I found tracks leading from the barn to the woods. At the end, a clearing, a shovel, disturbed soil. A torn comic book bag. My gut twisted. Back at the barn, Silas was waiting. You opened it? He asked. No. But what is it? Memories, mistakes, and something worth more than both, he said, then vanished down the road. The next day, Karen returned with a construction crew, buzzing drones, and clipboards. I snuck into the barn, fired up my rotary grinder, and opened the box. Inside, pristine comic books, first editions, sealed. Underneath, vintage baseball cards. And then a folder of document photos of Silas, old auction receipts, a property sale signed by the former owner and countersigned by K.D. Karen Delaney. I was still reeling when Silas returned. He admitted it. In the 90s, comics became a black market currency. He hid the box. Karen found out. Wanted in. Things went south. They split. He lost track of the stash. Karen showed up moments later. Give it to me, Silas. You owe me. No, Karen. You tried to steal it. She claimed she had records. Claimed she helped launder collectibles. I stepped in. Actually, Karen, you tried to seize my barn illegally. Sheriff Dahlia is already reviewing this. Karen bolted. Literally. Across the field, clipboard flapping. And Buckshot, bless him, charged again. Her scream echoed across the pasture. The town buzzed like a kicked beehive. Karen was questioned for trespassing, disturbing the peace, and intent to annoy. Her property claim collapsed. The deed was fake. Silas and I handed over the documents. Some regional blog caught wind. TV scouts called. I declined. Buckshot was now a local hero. Kids brought treats. Someone knitted him a saddle blanket that read, Defender of the Barn. The box's value? Fortune. But Silas didn't want the money. Just peace. Karen didn't get it. At the hearing, she represented herself in a beige pantsuit and tried to argue beefcake was a trained weapon. Hank Dober, the judge, nearly choked. Dahlia bit her lip to stop laughing. I kept it simple. Deed, affidavits, and a framed photo of Buckshot in a birthday hat. Case dismissed. Injunction lifted. Karen vanished soon after. No note. Just a U-Haul and silence. Word is she moved to Maine and is trying to ban roosters. Some people never learn. Now the barn's mine again. Fully. Buckshot rules it with quiet dignity and an occasional hebut. Tourists ask. I just say, respect the ram. Sometimes Silas visits. We sit, drink bourbon, and watch the sunset over the pasture. Not every story ends with drama. Sometimes it ends with peace, a locked barn, and a sheep who really, really hates trespassers.